Tell us about the fight. What and the anniversary. So how long has it been since you've won this fight, and how
It's well, it was 92 when Kennett announced to the school closure, and so what's that make it? Nearly, not really good at maths. I'm more visual.
Nearly 30 years.
Nearly 30 years, yeah. Nearly 30 years. So I think Foley's always, and a lot of us, our families and people who are connected to the story, to tell that story from, an Aboriginal perspective, as a community voice. Because there's so many different families and people, not only Aboriginal people either, other non-Aboriginal people who are mostly creative. Teachers who worked at the school, drama teachers. We've got former drama teacher before the closure, working on the project, as well as post, when it was reopened. So that's Jill Morgan and John Staley. So they're really heavily invested and involved in this project, because, those relationships with those teachers are still very strong. Even, John, I've known Jill for, nearly 30 years. And I've continued to work with her. Because I guess it's more important, not even more important than education, but it's a bigger story than just one part of society. It's really centred in on keeping identity alive in the education space, and how that Aboriginal people add value. And I think the creative arts, Northland had a very good central creative arts program, to year 13 mature age. So we're Dedrie Baksh, who I work with as Koori educators. We really utilise that the arts at the Northlands, at Preston Northlands Secondary College, to build Aboriginal perspectives and building relationships with like-minded people, as well as creatives, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal creatives coming in and building relationships with those people. It's about social change as well. So, all of those things, cultural safety, people feeling confident to be able to just be themselves, and that's really what we're all fighting for, is, the value of Aboriginal people and families that bring to education, because it's not really always evident, I think, because of the lack of knowledge of what Australia has a black history. That's a lot of people have got no idea of that history. So it's really important for the future of Australia to change those, the way we live together, work together, all of those things. In terms of the positive impact and, moving forward for Australia between Aboriginal people, non-Aboriginal people and people of other cultures, to be just a better place to live.
Yeah. And it's important to celebrate a victory too.
Exactly. Really important. It sort of feels surreal because being so long ago, and yet it feels, and I guess it makes me think about Aboriginal songlines, just in a modern context, that those, Aboriginal continuum, past, present, future, isn't isolated in different forms. They're all continually running together. And I think it's more evident the more that we're able to bring together Western knowledge systems and Aboriginal knowledge systems to really see that more clearly and understand how that impacts not in a positive way, not just on Aboriginal people, but on broader society. as well, because, I mentioned earlier about a visual learner. I think I've become more aware of my own way of learning. I call it Aboriginal ways of learning and knowing and doing. But I don't see that as a special needs or anything. Even kids or people who have been identified with special needs, I just think because people don't fit into boxes, institutional boxes, they're then labelled, and because a lot of people are in those different ways of learning are really gifted, and I think they're the things that are lacking in education, both in the past, present, and we need to change that way of thinking. So,
Great, Did. Thank you.
Spears. I need to mention the Spears.
Spears, go on, yeah.
And Mothama Sinapan, Bruce Foley as the two students who were the complainants. Mothama was in the early days. There were young, there were girls dancing with the Spears, and the Spears played a key role in promoting what the fight was about, and the importance of dance and feeling our identity, letting our ancestors know that we're still here, letting country know, because we have all of our different families have connections to lots of different mobs. It's not just we've got a really rich history and background, and it's important to let not only ancestors know that we're still here. That's what the language, the dancing, the chanting is a communication that connects with country, and that's really important. My granddaughter here, it's part of the next generation, to keep building that, and that was really the whole idea of the Spears, was to have that body to for anyone can come and dance with the Spears and be a part of it, to help keep that going into the future. And the fact that we through Mothama and Bruce, and we won the case on indirect racial discrimination. The way I interpret that is how it relates to institutional racism that is embedded in colonised institutions. They're still, those institutions that are there today are really built from the early forms of when they first invaded Australia. So they're still really, those forms are created by, and I think that's part of the difficulty. Those structures need to be changed.